we're celebrating. Ladies and gentlemen, on this Christmas Day, I want to reflect on what might have and could have been on October 7th, 8th, 9th, and beyond. The world could have been different. The world made one move. Welcome to the special Christmas edition of the Rant Network. I'm David Solomon, flying solo. Usually I'm here with Stuart Brisgell. Normally we dive into raw, unfiltered issues spanning the news, pop culture, politics, and beyond. Whether we're discussing today's absurdities or delving into deep-seated issues in society, we keep it real. So sit back on this Christmas Day and allow me to reflect on what could have been here on the Rant Network. Now, if you have been paying attention at all and have been seeing what's been going on the streets in Canada, the United States, Europe, and beyond, protesters who say they're peaceful, who say they're trying to create a Palestinian state, who claim that they are really looking for a solution, listen carefully to their chants. Not just from the river to the sea, but now intifada, intifada, intifada. For those who are not aware, intifada was calling for an uprising. It's calling for death. It's calling for more terrorism. This is what Arafat wanted and Hamas wanted back at the turn of the century. When peace was on the table, when Ehud Barak offered Yasser Arafat what he wanted for a two-state solution, instead Arafat called for an intifada, an uprising, more death, more destruction. This is where we are, ladies and gentlemen, since October the 7th. The screaming, the yelling, the chants have gotten nastier. The response, the tone has gotten worse. And as a society, we've let it go. As a country, we've let it go. As a globe, as a world community, as a global community, whatever you want to call us, we've let it go. It's vile. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm not trying to give you a parallel universe concept. I'm going to give you something that could have stopped this. And boy, oh boy, the world could have been a different place. What do I mean? So let me go back to that unfortunate day of October the 7th, a Saturday. There was a concert taking place in the south of Israel. People were sleeping. People were enjoying another Saturday, a holiday actually in Israel, a holiday for the Jews around the world. And on an unfortunate morning, Hamas terrorists breached the wall, the border into Israel, and went out over the course of a number of hours to kill, burn, maim, behead, violate, rape 1,200 people. Men, women, children, babies, seniors, Holocaust survivors, foreign workers, Jews, Muslims. It was indiscriminate. It was vile. Now, we've seen this type of war crime numerous times, but not like this. Because as was shown on the GoPros that these terrorists had on them, they were gleeful. They were excited. They were thrilled by the notion of what they have done to the Jews, to Israelis. Now, while some people in the world would call it Israeli propaganda because these are the haters, Hamas proudly posted it up on their social networks. Hamas proudly displayed what they had done. And fast forward, the leaders of Hamas have said they will do it again. But on that October 7th, the violation was unheard of. On top of it all, they kidnapped 240 some people, men, women, children, babies, seniors, Holocaust survivors, Jews, non-Jews, Israelis, non-Israelis, it didn't matter. They had their collateral. They were going to make Israel pay painfully. The depth of this war crime, unimaginable. And the world stayed silent. Now, there were some countries who made comments, that was not nice. That wasn't good. That shouldn't have happened. But a full blown condemnation by the world community never happened. Last week, the United Nations voted, 193 nations voted, and the vast majority voted for a unilateral, non binding, but a unilateral ceasefire that Israel is to stop attacking Gaza, to allow humanitarian aid. Now, the world could get together and vote on something. Imagine, if you will, on October the 8th or the 9th, that the same body had gotten together and voted, maybe not the same percentage, to condemn Hamas, to demand Hamas disarm, return all the hostages, that Qatar will bring forward all of the guilty Hamas leaders who organized this atrocity to be put forward for war crimes. Had that happened, Israel wouldn't have had to retaliate. Had Hamas disarmed, had the leaders presented themselves properly for arrest, there would be no deaths. There would be no destruction in Gaza. Instead, we'd actually be heading towards, potentially, a discussion of a two-state solution. A new Palestine, if you will. All that could have been avoided was that the United Nations, the world body, would get together. But we know that couldn't happen because, unfortunately, this is the mindset of the world. When a Jew attacks an Arab for any reason, for self-defense, that's normally what happens. But anytime that happens, we have to call for intifada. We have to throw it all over the top. And because of the depths of hate that people have towards the Jews, the depths of anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, anti-whatever, they were never going to rally together to support Israel. This would be a terrible idea. Because how else would you make Israel the violator? How would you make it the oppressor if they become the victim? The Arab bloc, Russia, China, Iran, wouldn't have let that vote go through. Arab countries would have used their influence on Africa and South America to ensure that this vote would never get to the floor. Russia would use its veto. China would use its veto to ensure that such a vote would never get to the floor. Because how else can we turn this on Israel? How else can we take the only democracy in the Middle East and screw her? By letting it go. By letting Israel do what she normally does, defend herself. Only this time, Israel has been on a mission to annihilate Hamas, to no longer permit the tens and hundreds of thousands of rockets fired on Israel over these last decade and a half. That they will stop the terrorism. But instead, the world wanted chaos. And now when you look in your homes, people, in your shopping malls, on your streets, look at the havoc. Look at the depths of hate being spewed. The burning of American flags at these protests. This is what you wanted? In Europe, burning of the flags, destruction of property. Is this what you wanted? In Canada, threatening a police officer, firebombing a synagogue. Is this what you wanted? Because you got it. Because you let it go. Because you didn't have the intestinal fortitude to stand up for what was right. The world rallied against Russia Then when Putin attacked the Ukraine, the world got together and condemned Russia immediately. And for the last 2 years, Zelensky's welcomed in by every government, and he comes out asking for help. And it's an issue if we don't help Ukraine. But Israel was attacked brutally. Brutally. This wasn't an attack on a military base. This was not an attack on the army. This was an attack on the people. And the world stayed silent. Now, I'm not delusional to believe that the world would have gotten together on October the 8th or 9th to do this. But think of how things could have been different. Think of how your government handled itself on those first few days. We saw Canada, Australia, New Zealand receive a wonderful thank you from Hamas, thanking them for siding with them against Israel. And now Justin Trudeau and the other leaders have a foot and mouth disease. They got caught siding with the terrorists. The media spewing out these so-called health ministry numbers of deaths. You're siding with the terrorists. Governments who continue to call on Israel for a unilateral ceasefire. You're siding with the terrorists. By allowing protests to go unopposed and allowing hate speech, allowing destruction of property, allowing this growing uncontrollable anti-Semitism, you're siding with the terrorists. You've done that. The governments of the world have let this happen. This could have been stopped, but they chose anarchy and chaos. So to the leaders of the world today, putting that pressure on Israel to stop, putting that pressure on Israel to stop bombing Gaza. I mean, I love when these terms are thrown out. When they tell them to stop going after Hamas, folks, listen to the testimonies being released by the Israeli army from the Hamas terrorists themselves. Listen to an Arab nurse who went from the north to the south to take care of the victims, and listen to his 7-minute description of what he saw. Watch what Hamas did on October the 7th. And ask yourself, would you let this happen? Would you be silent? Would you let your government get away with such negligence? Because that's what's happening. Mayors are quiet. Premiers are quiet. Governors are quiet. Presidents and prime ministers are quiet. But only attacking Israel, only condemning Israel. That is the universal message. You then are supporting terrorism. So as we sit today on Christmas, celebrating the birth of Christ, the Messiah, the hope for hope and peace, because that's what this holiday is supposed to bring. Instead, the Pope, leaders, and others have brought on chaos in your lives. Hate, destruction, anarchy. What could have been on October 8th or 9th, what could have been in this world, where we would be celebrating a quiet and peaceful Christmas. Instead, your lives are disrupted thanks to your government, thanks to the people who stood silent when they could have stood for real values. Thank you for tuning into the Rant Network today. I'm wishing you a happy holidays and a peaceful one at that. We found you found value in today's rant. Catch us every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Eastern. This one was pre-recorded, but we will be back on Wednesday at noon Eastern. Engage us, please, on social media. Check us out on YouTube. We genuinely appreciate your feedback. Wishing you all the very best on these holidays.